All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the shir. Today's shir is, of course, about Chanukah. Some halachas, some important halachas about Chanukah. Just a small. What we're going to do is throughout the shir, if you have any questions, just put them in the chat, and we'll try and address them. But just before we start, I just want to make a very short introduction about Chanukah in general. We know that Chanukah is an extremely powerful yontif. So many svarim talk about the kedusha, the holiness, the greatness, the depth of Chanukah. The Sfas Emes explains that the lights of Chanukah actually are sparks, are lights from the Oir HaGonus, from the hidden light that Hashem hid at the very beginning of creation, where it says that He hid the light in Torah. So when people learn Torah, they can connect to that light, and also we light the Chanukah candles. There's also a nice word again from the Sfas Emes that he says, we know that Chanukah is called Chanukah because Chonu Chofhei. The Yidden rested. They came to rest. They won the war and they rested on the 25th. But he says an interesting idea. He says the word Chofhei in Tanakh we know is the word Koi, like Koi Omar Hashem. This is what Hashem says. And we know that when Hashem spoke to Moshe Rabbeinu, it says Zeh, because there's an expression of clarity. When he spoke to the other Nevi'im, it was more cryptic, it was more in vision. So he spoke more with the word Koi Omar. So therefore, Koi, Chafei, is an expression of ambiguity, of non-clarity, and so on. But Chanukah gives brought the clarity. The Chanukah candles that represent the Torah, the light of Torah, brings clarity, the ness of Chanukah, the miracle of Chanukah, and by extension the Torah and the clarity and the values that Chanukah represents brings clarity to that which is not clear. And of course, the whole point of Chanukah also is that it has the power to transform darkness, to illuminate darkness, and so on. So I just want to go through briefly halachas of Chanukah, which are important halachas and practical halachas to know. And again, if anyone has any questions, please put them into the chat. So just to first of all define and explain a little bit the mitzvah of Chanukah. Mitzvah of Chanukah is, in fact, there's a big discussion among the poskim exactly how you define the mitzvah of Chanukah, but essentially, it's actually not really a mitzvah on every individual. It's a mitzvah on the home, so to speak. In other words, every house has to have Chanukah licht. The minhag is that all the men light Chanukah licht, but from the basic halacha, it's something that the home has to be. And therefore, when you're in a home, when you live in a home, and that's what women sort of have the custom to do, that when you live in a home, you're covered by the person that lights Chanukah licht in that home. If a person is living alone, an unmarried woman or a girl in seminary or away from the house and so on, or then they have to light their own Chanukah licht. So therefore, it becomes a thing to light. But a person can be covered by Chanukah licht that is lit in the house, provided that they're living in the same house. Because really, it's sort of everyone has the chiyuv to be covered by some Chanukah candles, but it doesn't have to be lit by every single individual necessarily. And that's why if you live in the same house, that someone is lighting Chanukah candles, you're covered by those Chanukah candles. If there isn't someone lighting Chanukah candles in that house, for example, a woman whose husband is away, or a woman who lives without a husband, or a single girl is living out of the house, whatever the case is, and of course, they all have to light Chanukah candles. Now, a very important halacha that many people are not aware of, and that's a very important halacha, and that is, Chanukah candles have to be lit at home. Now, there's different ways how you define home, but it has to be lit at home. So, for example, what you can't do is the following. Let's say it comes Chanukah, it's Chanukah candle night, or whatever, one of the nights of Chanukah, and you go over to a friend, your family goes to another family to eat supper, or to socialize, and time from Chanukah licht comes, some people think that it's okay just to put a menorah in someone else's house and light the Chanukah candles there. That's a big mistake. It's not okay. Chanukah candles have to be lit at your home. Now, if you're staying somewhere overnight, so for example, let's say someone's married children comes to stay by them for Shabbos. That's okay, because then for that night, their home is somewhere else. The place where you sleep is your home. But a place where you just go and have a little bit of a meal, that doesn't become your home, right? So the place, if you go to stay there, if you go to a hotel or you go to a friend or you go to parents or children to stay over for that night, it becomes your home. And of course, then you can light Chanukah candles there as well. An interesting question is asked among the poskim discuss. How about if someone goes away for Shabbos? So let's say you go to your children for Shabbos or to your parents for Shabbos. So Friday night Chanukah candles you light in the home where you're going to sleep for Shabbos. Then what happens on Motzei Shabbos? Motzei Shabbos you plan to go home. Do you have to wait till you go home to light Chanukah candles, or can you light in the place where you've been for Shabbos? And the answer, many poskim say that it's okay to light at the place where you were for Shabbos. So before you go home, you can light Chanukah candles in the place where you stayed for Shabbos. That's still very different to going over just to have a snack or to a meal, because you were there for Shabbos. That's your home, and therefore it remains your home until you leave there, and therefore it's okay to light the Motzei Shabbos candles there as well. Okay, I just wanted to point that out because that's obviously different to going to see a menorah, public menorah, which are very important things, where we publicize the miracle, or the menorah that we light in shul. All those things are very important, they're very important customs. But that, if you go to, let's say, one of the public Chanukah menorah lightings, and you see the Chanukah candles being lit, and you participate in the Chanukah candles being lit, you haven't fulfilled the mitzvah. When you get home, you still have to light your own menorah. Okay. Now, when you light your menorah, where should the Chanukah candles be? There's different customs. Some have a custom to light it at the doorway, to put it in one of the doorways of the house, opposite side of the mezuzah. Some people put it in the window. It's all good. You fulfill the mitzvah either way. The Chabad men used to put it after by the doorway. Others put it by the window. There is a little bit of a question if you put it by the window in an apartment building which is very high. So if you're on the top floor or something of an apartment building and you're more than 10 meters away from the ground, then putting it in the window could be a problem. In that case, it's better not to put it in the window. But otherwise, putting it in the window is fine. Actually, the truth is, at the end of the day, wherever you put the Chanukah menorah, as long as it's recognizable that it's for Chanukah candles, which today it is, because you light it in a Chanukiah, you light it in a menorah, you have fulfilled the mitzvah. Preferably either by the door or by a window, but you yotze the mitzvah, you still fulfill the mitzvah wherever you light the candles. Now, I just want to talk about the time of lighting Chanukah candles. And it's very relevant here in Australia because sometimes it poses a difficulty. So ideally, there's an ideal time, and then what happens if you can't light in that ideal time? So ideally the Chanukah candles should be lit after Shkia, after sunset. Now, there's actually two customs. Some people light after sunset. Some people light when the stars come out, right? So I'll give you an example. Just the first night Chanukah candles this year in Sydney. This is a Sydney time I'm giving you. Is Sunday night. Now, there's something called Plaga Mincha. Plaga Mincha is like an hour and a quarter before the sun goes down. Before that, you definitely can't light Chanukah candles. This coming Sunday night, Plaga Mincha is 6:35. Right? So any Chanukah candles that is lit before that, there's no mitzvah. It has to be specifically after Plaga Mincha. However, it should not be lit after Plaga Mincha. It should be lit after the sunset. Sunset is about 8:01. It should be lit after that. Some people wait till the stars come out, which during Chanukah this year, it's about 8:30. The beginning of Chanukah, about 8:35 towards the end of Chanukah. Right? So you light the Chanukah candles either after sun goes down or after the stars come out. Different customs. Either way is good. But here's the point. The Chanukah candles must burn for a half an hour after the stars come out. In other words, let's say this Sunday night, the stars are coming out 8:31. It has to burn till 9:01. Right? Why am I saying this? Because some people light on candles and light on these very thin colored candles. They only last about half an hour. Right? Therefore, you really shouldn't light too early. You should make sure it's nightfall already. It should be after 8:31 or after 8:35. And then it just needs to burn for half an hour, and then you're okay. Those people lighting on oil, of course, can do it early if they want to. They can do it after the Shkia, after the sun comes down. The Chabad minhag is specifically to do it after the Shkia, ideally, not to wait for stars coming out. But But it can be done then, or can be done when the stars come out, but it has to burn for a half an hour after the stars come out, which is roughly till about 9:05 in Sydney. Okay. Now, what happens if a couple of things happen? What happened if you didn't manage to light on time? Right? You were out, you didn't manage to light on time, so, and you come back home and it's already 9:30, way after the time of Chanukah candles. The halacha is you can still light, especially if people in the house are still up, or if you're living alone, if you're up. Whatever the case is, you can still light Chanukah candles at least till midnight. Some say even after midnight, but at least till midnight, it's okay to light Chanukah candles. Therefore, I want to just point out something. If someone knows they have to go somewhere, for example, let's say someone has to go to a wedding, and they're leaving to the wedding at 7 o'clock, let's say, right? It's better not to light then, even though it's already after Plaga Mincha. It's better to go and then come back and light late. And when you light late, just make sure that the oil or the lights can burn for half an hour, right? So again, there's an ideal time to light, which is either after sunset or just after the stars come out, like 8:05 or 8:35, let's say. But if you didn't do that, you can still light later on, because nowadays the whole time was based on the times of the Gemara, where they used to light outside, and it was mainly to publicize the miracle for people on the street, and people didn't hang around that late. But nowadays, we light inside, and the publicity of the miracle, the Pesumah Nisa, is more for inside, and therefore it's okay to light late if you didn't light on time. Ideally, you light on time, but if not, it's okay. So that's in terms of the time. But obviously, I want to point out that where it's different is Friday and Motzei Shabbos. So Friday of Chanukah, right? Friday of Chanukah, you have to light just before candle lighting, before the Shabbos candles, but it has to be after Plaga Mincha. And it's Plaga Mincha, this coming, not this Friday night, but the Shabbos Chanukah in Sydney is 6:38. So it must be lit after 6:38. If it means not going to shul, that's okay. So don't go to shul better and light on time. Because some shuls start earlier and it becomes very complicated with Chanukah candles. So therefore better to light on time. So you light the Chanukah candles after 6:38, even though it's light, but it must be after 6:38, after Plaga Mincha. And then you must make sure that there's enough oil, enough candle to light, to burn till half an hour, till 9 o'clock, 9:05, till half an hour after Tzeis, after nightfall. All right. Now, I just want to point out, therefore, on Friday, after those who use these little candles, the colored candles, they're not good for Friday afternoon. Therefore, Friday afternoon, you must light on either tea lights, you can put in a row some tea lights, or light on oil, because they have to burn till half an hour after nightfall, which is about 9:05. Motzei Shabbos, obviously we light later. You can't light on Shabbos. So Motzei Shabbos we light when we come home from shul, when everyone comes home from shul. We do it as soon as possible. We don't eat or do anything else before Chanukah candles, but you light the Chanukah candles whenever you can when you get back from shul, and it has to burn for a half an hour. Once we're talking about lighting and it has to burn for half an hour, let's just talk about what you light on. So anything that works, anything that's got some sort of oil and wick. So when you light with a candle, for example, the wax is the oil, the wick is the wick. That's why electric lights doesn't work on Chanukah, even though according to some, it works for Shabbos candles, but definitely not for Chanukah, because it doesn't work on a wick basis. It has to be a wick and oil, like the miracle of Chanukah. But we know that ideally, the best thing is to light on olive oil, because olive oil is the Zeichel Mikdash. It's how we remember the Beis Hamikdash. That's the miracle took place through olive oil. And many people light on olive oil. Nowadays you can even buy ready-made little containers with olive oil and the wick all ready to do if you don't know how to do it yourself. I prefer to do it myself. It's part of the Chanukah journey. But if it's difficult, you can buy one of those things and just light on that. As long as you have a menorah that could fit it. But it definitely is a hidur. It's definitely preferable to light on olive oil, because that was a beautiful, it burns nicely, and also that was the way the miracle actually took place. Once again, just those came on a bit late. If you have any questions, please put it in the chat, and we'll try to address it. If a person lit Chanukah candles, and by mistake it went out, there was a little bit of a wind, it went out, halachically, you've still fulfilled the mitzvah. There's a concept on Chanukah called Kofsa Ein Zokukla. which means if it goes out, you don't have to relight it because the mitzvah is the lighting of the candle. You can't put it out, but it doesn't have to be lit. In other words, it doesn't have to be relit. However, the minhag is that if the Chanukah candles go out for whatever reason, that you do relight them, except for Shabbos, of course. Shabbos, if you light, and then you bring in Shabbos, you light Shabbos candles, or you daven Ma'ariv, whatever the case is, it's now properly Shabbos, and therefore once it's Shabbos, meaning even if it's not dark yet, but you've taken upon yourself Shabbos, then of course we can't relight the candles, and you rely on the halacha that although you lit the candles in the correct way, you have fulfilled the mitzvah, and you don't need to relight the candles. Now when I say the mitzvah is to light the candles, you have to put enough oil to burn for half an hour after nightfall, but that doesn't mean it actually has to burn that long. In other words, if it goes out for whatever reason, you still fulfill the mitzvah, as long as when you lit it, you were lighting the right amount of oil. I just want to clarify a few things. First of all, the shamash. So the minhag is to have a shamash, although you fulfill the mitzvah of Chanukah candles without a shamash. The reason is because one of the things with Chanukah candles is that we're not supposed to have any benefit from the Chanukah candles. Now, in ancient times, that of course was an issue because they had no electricity, and therefore when they lit candles, they were generating much needed light. So therefore, they had to make sure that they have other light in the room. And that's the origin of the shamash, so that when they are doing things that require light, they rely on the shamash or the other light that's in the room. Nowadays, of course, not that critical because we have electric light anyway, but nevertheless, the minhag is still to have the shamash. Those who light the menorah with oil, most people have the minhag that for the shamash they don't use oil, they just use a candle, and they try to use a beeswax candle known as shiva, because that's the next best thing to light on Chanukah. And that becomes the shamash. But with the shamash, you don't have to be so strict that it should be big enough to light, till half an hour after nightfall and all that kind of stuff, because just it's not really part of the Chanukah candles. Much more is the concept of the actual candles themselves. There is a minhag that women have not to do. The expression in the Shulchan Aruch is not to do melacha, not to do melacha while the Chanukah candles are burning. Now, first of all, what does it mean, melacha? So the minhag is, now first of all, what's the reason for this? The reason why women took on that extra stringency, although Chanukah is a regular yontif, meaning it's a yontif that is not, it's a regular yontif in the sense like Purim and the other Yom Tovim, which are weekday Yom Tovim, which don't require refraining from work, especially on Chanukah. One's permitted to go to work, one's permitted to do any melacha, it's not a problem. Even more than Purim. Purim, we try not to go to work, maybe, or not to open a shop, or something like that. But Chanukah is different. Chanukah, one can attend to regular work. Nevertheless, there's this minhag that women took upon themselves not to do work during when the Chanukah candles are burning. The reason being, because number one, we know the women are obligated in the midst of Chanukah candles as well, notwithstanding that it's a time-bound mitzvah because they were part of the miracle. Not only were they part of the miracle, but famously the miracle came about through a woman, Yehudis, who decapitated the king of Syria at the time, the Greek king, whatever the case was, and because of that the army became very, very afraid and ran away. So she made the miracle, and therefore the nest became through the women, therefore the women took that sort of extra special thing. Others say the reason is to serve as a reminder not to have benefit from the candles, and therefore they do it. Now, what do we mean by melacha? The minhag is, we don't mean you can't do any housework or you can't do fry a latke or something like that. You can. What we mean is more like sort of like a bit like Rosh Chodesh, not to do laundry, not to sew or fix things in a garment and that kind of thing. Those type of melachas try to refrain as long as the Chanukah candles are burning. Now, most poskim say what we mean when the Chanukah candles are burning, we don't mean the entire time when the Chanukah candles are burning. We mean till the end of the half an hour. The end of the half an hour, which it has to burn after nightfall, that's when, because sometimes people put in extra oil and it burns for 2 hours, 3 hours. We don't mean that all the time that the Chanukah candles are burning, that you're not allowed to do melacha. It's only through that time, that the half an hour, when it's burning. In fact, once the Chanukah candles have reached the half an hour after nightfall, or if you lit them late, once they've been burning for half an hour and there's a reason to put them out, I don't know, it's too dangerous to leave them there, whatever the case is, one can do that because it's really okay, the mitzvah is over. Although Ideally, the minhag is whatever oil you put in order to light Chanukah candles, you let it burn out if you can. But otherwise, really, the mitzvah is over once it's half an hour. Once it's burned, the half an hour after nightfall. Okay. There's other minhagim, other customs to do with those are the basic laws of Chanukah candles. Of course, the Chanukah menorah has to be a kosher menorah. It's got to be in one straight line, and all other things that come with the menorah. The menorah in the house should be nice as possible. Many people have the minhag to try and have a silver menorah. It's not critical for the halacha, but whatever the case is, it should be a nice menorah. And to do the mitzvah in the nicest possible way. I'll just mention an interesting little discussion in the poskim as well. Those that light on oil, there's a question whether each night, obviously you need to make a new wick for the extra candle, but in terms of the previous candle, for example, on the 5th night, so you already have 4 wicks, do you have to make new wicks, or can you use the old wicks? So there is a concept, some people use the old wicks, and they use a dafka, because there's a concept that when you light a wick, and you put it out, it's easier to light it the second time. It lights quicker the second time, which is why some people have a minhag on a Friday. The women light the Shabbos candles, but some people have a minhag that the men come before and light all the candles and put them out. So the wick is done, it's worked through well, and it's easier to light the Shabbos candles. Not everyone does this, especially nowadays when candles generally light quite nicely on their own anyway. But nevertheless, some people say the same thing with Chanukah, therefore you don't need to make new wicks, because you can rely on the old wicks burn nicely, and it's fine. Others say, actually, no, you should make new wicks. Why? Because, just an interesting thing I'll share with you, because they say that the whole idea of the Chanukah candles is zeichel menorah, is to remember the miracle of the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash. The halacha in the Beis HaMikdash's menorah was that each night you made new wicks. It was new wicks each night. And therefore they say the menorah of Chanukah, although it's not the menorah of the Beis HaMikdash, of course, and there's many differences between the Chanukah menorah and the menorah of the Beis HaMikdash, but because it's zeichel lenes, because it's to remember the miracle of the Beis HaMikdash, therefore we should make new wicks just like they did in those days. Whatever your minhag is fine. Okay. Some other halachas and customs of Chanukah. In Chanukah we add in davening, in the Amidah, in Shemona Esrei, and in benching, alanisim. Halacha is, alanisim is different to Yalav Yovoi, or different to Ritzei on Shabbos, for example. One should say alanisim, but if you didn't say alanisim, you do not have to go back, not in Shemona Esrei, and not in benching. Now, in benching, there is a Pischei Tshuva that says, and this is the minhag, if someone forgets to say alanisim in benching, then towards the end of benching, when you have the various harachamons, there's a harachamon you can add that goes something like this. It says, harachamon uyasel lonu nisim, geshem exactly, lashon Hashem shasiso laviseinu, vayom vehem bizman hazeh, and then you can say bimei matisyo and the whole nisim. Whatever, if you say it, if you forget, it's okay. You don't go back, you don't do the benching again. Shemona Esrei, the same thing. I will point out that this Chanukah has one of the rare occasions where the Shabbos of Chanukah is also Rosh Chodesh. It's the first day, Rosh Chodesh Tevis, which is the longest benching of the year. So it's nice not to forget Alanisim on that Shabbos, because you get to do the longest benching. Meaning the longest benching because it's benching after the Shabbos meals. You have to say Ritzei, you have to say Alanisim, and you have to say Yalav Yovoi. Not in that order, but I'm saying you have to say all 3 things. Alanisim first, actually, then Ritzei, then Yalav Yovoi. So anything that could be said in benching is said, and therefore it's the longest benching of the year, both, of course, the whole Shabbos, the Friday night, and the Shabbos day. So Alanisim is the other thing. Also, there's an interesting halacha. There's a discussion in the poskim whether there's a mitzvah to have a meal on Chanukah. It's an interesting discussion. The reason for that is because we don't find in the poskim, it seems from the Rambam a little bit, that you should have a meal. We don't find the obligation of simcha. Now, in Yom Tov, for example, Shabbos is the idea of Oinek Shabbos. Yom Tov is the idea of Simchas Yom Tov. Now, Simchas Yom Tov you only fulfill if you wash and you eat bread and have a Suda. Purim, of course, you have to wash. Purim is also Simcha. And it's a mitzvah to eat the Suda. It's one of the mitzvahs of Purim. Chanukah doesn't mention that. One of the reasons is because we know that Chanukah is so different to Purim and so different to some of the other Yom Tovim that it was much more of a spiritual salvation than it was a physical one. Because the main part of Chanukah really, although it was very, very miraculous how they won the war, Rabbi Miyad Ma'atim and so on, was an unbelievable miracle. But the emphasis of Chanukah actually is more about the miracle of the menorah, which represented a whole spiritual reconnection with Hashem, and therefore it's much more about spiritual observance, hence the mitzvah of lighting the menorah, right? It's much more of a spiritual mitzvah than it is about eating or eating things, right? So therefore, the Shulchan Aruch says that we don't paskin that you have to have a meal on Chanukah, and therefore the minhag is you don't necessarily have to have a meal. However, it says with toiv laharbek tzas, one should a little bit increase in the meals of Chanukah as well. And if you sing songs of praise to HaKadosh Baruch Hu during those meals, then the meal becomes a sudas mitzvah. There is an interesting minhag in Shulchan Aruch, a minhag to eat milchika food, milk food, dairy food. It's not such a widespread minhag actually, but there is such a minhag to eat milchiks. Why? Two reasons are brought. First of all, because the famous story of Yehudis we mentioned before, that when she was summoned to the general, or to the top general of the army, whatever it was, to be intimate with him, she agreed and she went in with a plan that she made him drunk. She fed him a lot of cheese and milchik things to become very thirsty, and then she gave him strong wine and he fell asleep, and then she killed him. So because that miracle came about because of milchiks, therefore there's a minute to eat milchiks. But I saw a different shot this week, an interesting shot, a different shot in the name of one of the great poskim or rebbes that speak about Chanukah. And he says one of the reasons is to eat milchiks on Chanukah because one of the things that the Greeks wanted to do, as we say in Alanissim, is lehashkicham Torah secha, to make the Yidden forget the Torah. They wanted to take away the learning of the Torah, not so much the academic part of learning of the Torah, but the kedusha, the holiness of learning Torah and connecting to Hashem through learning Torah. And therefore the miracle, and they were semi-successful to a degree. We know that many people Hellenized and became like the Greeks, and therefore Torah learning was a big loss. And therefore the miracle of Chanukah brought about like another reenactment of Matan Torah, of the giving of the Torah. It's like Shavuos almost, like another giving of the Torah. The Torah was renewed, so to speak, amongst the Yidden. And therefore, just like on Shavuos it's a minhag to eat milchiks, so too on Chanukah some people have a minhag to eat milk foods. But as I say, I've never seen it as a widespread minhag, but nevertheless the minhag is there. What I have seen, of course, and what is more famous, is the minhag of eating fried foods, which depending on what culture you come from, it's either in the form of latkes. Most common nowadays, it's more than latkes, is donuts. I think that's sort of more what is developed in Israel. The ancient sort of European minhag was more latkes, but whatever it is, it's about eating fried foods, which have oil, because of course it's got to do with the mitzvah of oil. The minhag isn't necessarily to eat tons of them, but it's a minhag to eat oily foods and things, particularly latkes or donuts. That's one of the minhagim of Chanukah candles. The yontiv of Chanukah. Another old, very traditional minhag is to give Chanukah gelt, to give Chanukah money to children. And I'm emphasizing Chanukah money as opposed to chocolate money, or I mean you can do that too, but or like presents and things like that. It's more about money, giving money. Then also training them to give tzedakah from the money and so on. Many reasons are given, but it's all got to do with the simcha of Chanukah and bringing simcha to the children, and so on and so forth. There is an interesting minhag. You can give Chanukah gelt every day, and in fact, the Lubavitcher Rebbe used to encourage people to give Chanukah gelt to their children every single day of Chanukah. But there is one day of Chanukah that has certain emphasis of giving Chanukah gelt, and originally that was the day of Chanukah gelt giving, and that's the 5th night of Chanukah. I saw it interesting. There's two reasons that I've seen why specifically the 5th night of Chanukah, because number one, the 5th night of Chanukah means that most of Chanukah has now arrived, so there's an extra simcha. The 4 days is the halfway mark, but then the 5th day is like the 5th, more like it's over the halfway mark. But also an interesting reason, according to the way the system that we use with the calendar, is that the 5th night of Chanukah can never fall out on a Shabbos. It's one of the things with Chanukah. Chanukah falls out on different days, but one of the days that the 5th night of Chanukah cannot fall out is a Shabbos, and therefore that's a good night to give Chanukah gelt. That's the minhag. The minhag is also for families to get together and have donuts and have a bit of a simcha of Chanukah and be mesamech in the great miracle that Hashem did for us. One of the things we know, but that sort of covers, I think, most of the things. Also, of course, the mitzvah of Hallel is there in Chanukah. Once you try Hallel, women are not obligated in Hallel, but it's nice to say Hallel if you can, with a bracha, the entire Hallel, which is every day of Chanukah, all 8 days of Chanukah. We know that Chanukah, just to end off, Chanukah is connected very much with Mashiach. In fact, Mashiach is an acronym for Madlik Shmoinas Yimei Chanukah, because we know the number 8 is very much connected with the Geula. The lights of the menorah, we know, is lights from the hidden light of Sheshis and Bereshis, that once again be revealed when Mashiach comes. And therefore, by observing the mitzvah of Chanukah in a deep way and keeping all the halachas and the mitzvahs, one should, hopefully, Mitzvah Hashem will be zoifer to the ultimate light, the light of Mashiach, which will come, and it'll be able to be Sameach Chanukah in the most beautiful way, which take place very, very soon in Mitzvah Hashem. That is a summary of the Hilchas Chanukah. I see there's no questions in the chat, but if anyone has questions, feel free to reach out to me. What I can do actually is, if you want to unmute, if you want to ask a question, you can do that now as well. I just made it possible, I think. And otherwise, everyone should have a Freilich Chanukah and only simchas and good things.
Thanks, Rabbi.
You're welcome.
Hi, Rabbi.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. I'm sorry I was late. I'm sure you addressed this, but I was late. I missed it.
That's okay.
Just